Chapter 301. Sue. To some people, the wind in the snowstorm sounded like a mournful song echoing through the vastness of the plains. It was so for Bai Sue. She pulled the fur around her collar tighter, and her breath came out in white puffs. There were also some who did not register the sound of the wind as if it was mourning. Instead, for them it sounded like someone sighing. That was how Su Ming heard it. He walked on the ground and stepped on the snow. As he listened to the sound of the wind along with the crunching sounds coming underneath his feet, he continued walking forward. The two of them did not walk at a fast pace, neither did they talk to each other. They simply welcomed the snow and wind in their faces as they gradually walked into the distance. The wind was strong and the snow fell heavily. A lot of it fell from the sky and fell on their shoulders, their clothes, and their hair. You also walked like this in the snowstorm with her in the past, right? After a long while, Bai Sue's soft voice reached Su Ming's ears. You still ask about it. Su Ming did not stop. He simply continued walking, and when he spoke, it sounded as if he was sighing. Shouldn't I have? Bai Sue took a few brisk steps forward to walk beside Su Ming before turning her head sideways to look at him. Su Ming remained silent for a moment before he spoke in a soft voice. Nostalgia appeared in his eyes. She and I walked in this manner many years ago. Bai Sue lowered her head and asked in a whisper, are we really that alike, she and I? Very, except for a few details. Su Ming's voice drifted in the wind. Is it this thing? Bai Sue stopped and brought out two items from her bosom. Then right before Su Ming, she placed them on her earlobes. A smile appeared on her lips when she looked at Su Ming, who had turned around to look at her. The moment Su Ming saw the pair of earrings hanging off Bai Sue's ears, he shuddered and a dazed look appeared in his eyes. That pair of earrings was something that belonged solely to Bai Ling in his memories. Bai Sue, standing under the night filled with snow and wind while wearing the earrings as snow floated down between them, threw Su Ming into an absent-minded state. It made him feel as if he had returned to that particular moment at the foot of Dark Mountain, the moment part of those beautiful years in his life. Su Ming, didn't you say that you'll walk in circles with me? A bashful look appeared on Bai Sue's face, but she kept her head straight and did not lower it. Instead, she kept her gaze on Su Ming as she spoke softly. The moment she said those words, Bai Sue clearly felt that Su Ming had frozen up in the snowstorm. Even his gaze, too, seemed to have frosted over. When she saw him acting this way, Bai Sue became exceedingly pleased with herself. She had been preparing for this day for a very long time. Just a bit more. Just as Bai Sue was feeling pleased with herself, Su Ming closed his eyes and sighed softly. When he opened them once again, his eyes were calm, and he turned around to walk forward. Bai Sue widened her eyes, then stomped her feet in a fit of discontentment before quickly catching up with him. At that very moment, in a corner of the temporary tribe built by Western Sea Clan for the auction was a clearly much more extravagant tent among the dozens of tents set up there, and within that tent, Sai Martian suddenly opened his eyes as he sat inside. A hint of surprise shone briefly in his eyes. There's no mistaking this. Just now, for a moment, I felt a berserker seed showing signs of blooming. That berserker seed is located on the snow plains beyond the tribe. The fluctuations from that berserker seed were so strong that it surpassed those from all my previous berserker children. That person is definitely Su Ming. Bai Sue, whether I succeed or fail now depends entirely on you. Sai Martian had originally given up on using Bai Sue to plant a berserker seed in Su Ming. He had thought that it would be very difficult to succeed. That was why he had instigated the incident with Zi Che and wanted to use Northern Frontier to kill Su Ming. However, he did not expect that the matter would end that way. Towards Bai Sue, he only felt deep regret and hate, but he did not dare offend her. After all, he still needed her help to enter Freezing Sky Cave. Quite some time had passed by and he had still received no news about it, but no news was also a form of hope for him. He had originally made up his mind that if he still had not obtained the right to enter Freezing Sky Cave before Sky Mist Shaman Hunt and Su Ming had also not become his berserker child, then he would need to join Sky Mist Shaman Hunt and obtain those shaman heads first. Yet if he could just manage to achieve one of those things, then he would not need to join the battle. He could instead focus all his attention on making preparations to enter Heaven Gate. The sudden signs of the blossoming seed this night made Ma Xin's heart instantly jump in joy. He stood up and lifted the tent flaps. As he looked at the world in the distance, excitement and anticipation appeared in his eyes. Bai Su, you are my destined wife. If you help me make this happen, then I will swear right now that I will marry you. Ma Xin mumbled and clenched his fists. Once he took a few deep breaths, he forced himself to calm down before he once again sat down on the snow. Su Ming continued walking on the plain of snow in the snowstorm. Once Bai Su caught up to him, still feeling discontented, she would occasionally glare at him, fuming as various thoughts raced in her head. At that moment, she did not know that Ma Xin was gazing at that particular spot from the tribe not too far away, waiting anxiously. Time trickled by, and it was soon midnight. The moonlight was scattered due to the snow floating down from the sky, yet in an instant, the light would merge together once again, making others feel like their eyes were playing tricks on them. It's late. If you have nothing else to do, go back. Su Ming's footsteps faltered and he turned around to look at Bai Su. Bai Su was silent. She did not speak. Su Ming returned to the path he originally came from and walked down that way as the wind and snow blew in the air. Su Ming. Bai Su suddenly called out as she stood there. The instant Su Ming turned around to look, Bai Su quickly walked forward and hugged him, burying her head in his chest. Su Ming was silent for a while before he lifted his arms and held Bai Su's shoulders. She lifted her head and looked at him. There was a complicated look and a hidden meaning that could not be described in her eyes as she stared at him. If we continue walking in the snow like this, will we walk until our heads turn white? Bai Su mumbled softly, and her voice sounded as if it had traveled through time. When it fell into Su Ming's ears, grief appeared in his eyes. At the same time, Ma Xin trembled where he was seated in his tent at the corner of the tribe. Excitement shone in his eyes, and it was so bright it could rival the light from the moon. His heart raced against his chest. He could feel that the aura of the berserker seed was growing stronger in the snow plains in the distance. Just a little more and it would be complete. That feeling not only made him excited, it also made him feel like throwing his head and laughing towards the sky. Su Ming, you might be getting stronger day by day, but you're just too confident in yourself. Bai Su's heart will always lie with me. She will fulfill my desires just as I have asked her to. You are still going to end up becoming my berserker child. Ma Xin stared at the snow plains in the distance with excitement and waited. On the snow plains, Su Ming stared at Bai Su as her voice echoed in his ears. The grief in his eyes became stronger and he closed his eyes quietly. The complicated look on Bai Su's face became more prominent. As she stared at him, hesitation and uncertainty rose within her. Let this end, Bai Su. You are not her. Don't make things difficult for yourself anymore. Su Ming's hoarse voice fell into her ears. He opened his eyes, and grief could be seen along with pity within them. He lifted his right hand, and in his palm was a fistful of snow. Place it in your hand and let it melt. When the snow turns into water, you will still be you, and you will not be her. Bai Su stared at the snow in Su Ming's palm blankly. After a long while, for a reason she did not even know herself, and as if she was controlled by some supernatural force, she whispered softly, Su Ming, do you still remember our promise? The moment she said those words, Su Ming's hand visibly trembled. But you didn't fulfill our promise. Bai Su mumbled, then took a few steps away and looked at Su Ming. The snow in Su Ming's palm had melted into water. He stared at Bai Su, and with a bitter smile, he nodded his head. When Bai Su saw Su Ming acting this way, she suddenly felt a sharp stab of pain in her heart and found herself unable to face him. She staggered backwards and moved further and further away, right until she could no longer see him in her eyes. Within the tribe, Ma Xin's laughter rose into the air. He stood in his tent with an ecstatic look that could not be hidden away under his excitement. He could distinctly sense that the berserker seed in the snow plains had successfully formed. He could even feel a faint connection between him and that seed. That connection gave him a feeling that with just one thought, he could determine whether that berserker seed lived or died. Su Ming, in the end you still ended up as my berserker seed. As Ma Xin laughed loudly, he walked out of his tent and moved towards the snow plains. He wanted to see how Su Ming looked right now with his own eyes. While on the way there, Xianxia suddenly stopped, because he saw Bai Su staggering forward on that snow plain as if she had just lost her soul. With joy flowing within him, Xianxia walked towards Bai Su. "Su, I'm sorry to have made you suffer." Xianxia was just about to hug Bai Su, but she instinctively moved away from his embrace. There was a complicated expression on her face, and she remained silent. "I originally wanted to go and meet my new berserker child, Su Ming, but you're more important than him. I'll stay by your side and have him come greet us." Xianxia was far too excited and hence did not bother with how Bai Su looked right then. Instead, in his mind, he gave the order for that berserker seed to come to them. Yet the moment he gave that order, Xianxia's expression started changing gradually, from that joyful excitement to uncertainty, then from uncertainty to puzzlement, and suddenly, his expression changed drastically. Su Ming was sitting on the snow plain as he looked at the snow falling from the sky. There was not a hint of grief on his face, only a calmness that seemed like the still water in an ancient well. He shook his head gently. "Bai Ling, I gave her a chance, and this was her choice. From now onwards, no matter how much she looks like you, even if she's so much like you that she has turned into you, she will not be able to affect my heart. It has ended, along with my very first change of heart." Su Ming lowered his head, and with a wave of his right hand, the drawing board appeared. A long time had passed since the change had begun, and now, for the first time ever since, he turned that board over, then looked at the figure of himself and the grass he had drawn under his feet. In Su Ming's eyes, the picture on the drawing board changed. The picture of himself in the drawing lifted his foot, and the grass ensnaring his foot was shaken free as he did so. Then he walked over it, just like a gust of wind that left no traces behind. As the picture changed, an aura characteristic of a transformation abruptly spread out from within Su Ming. His hair floated in the wind, and an aged look that seemed to have seen through something in the world appeared in his eyes. At that moment, the snow around him also seemed to be moving towards him. For the first time ever, in the picture of the blood moon and dark mountain on his body, snow started falling down. The picture of the snow-covered blood moon and dark mountain. Chapter 302, Second Young Lord. As snow appeared on the berserker mark on his body, that aura of transformation became stronger. The berserker mark under Su Ming's robes started swimming all over his body as if it had come alive. A whirlwind spread out from within his body and blew away the snow around him in all directions. Su Ming's hair moved without wind, and gradually, the black shade of his hair started changing, gaining a purple hue. Compared to the white snow, that purple shade gave off an alluring feeling, along with an indescribable mysteriousness. The five-peaked dark mountain started letting off a dim light on Su Ming's face, like a totem, and on his chest, a layer of snow gradually gathered on the grass, trees, and houses in the tribe under Dark Mountain. The blood moon appeared in the sky within the berserker mark. That blood moon was Su Ming's right eye. Even if he had both his eyes closed at the moment, the red glare shining brilliantly like the moon in his right eye could not be hidden away. There was also snow falling down in that berserker mark, and it looked real. It was as if it had existed within the mark since the beginning, but only then did Su Ming have the right to obtain it and have it revealed to the world. When the snow appeared in the berserker mark and at the instant the picture of the snow-covering blood moon and dark mountain was formed, Su Ming opened his eyes. Right as he did so, a mighty presence shot out from the blood moon in his right eye. He spread out his arms to his sides. "Dark Mountain," he mumbled, and his voice fused with the moaning sounds in the wind and snow. No one could hear his words clearly, but the moment his voice echoed in the air, the sky above him started distorting, and a gigantic mountain from Su Ming's memories appeared in the sky. It was a majestic mountain, a mountain that was formed of 5 summits connected together. The 5 summits looked like 5 fingers on a giant's hand that were spread wide apart as if it wanted to break through space itself. This time, the manifested Dark Mountain looked incredibly real and did not even have a hint suggesting that it was an illusion. It was as if it had existed in this place since the beginning of time, and as if it should exist there. The moment Dark Mountain appeared, an incredible sorrow spread around Su Ming. In all the places that the sorrow visited, the wind and snow came to a standstill. In all the parts it passed by, the earth trembled. In all the directions it went to, the weather changed. Not too far away, in the tribe set up by Western Sea Clan for the auction, were a dozen-something swordship hybrids that were stuck into the ground like swords. Several old men could be found sitting within each of them. Yet at that moment, at that very instant, almost all the old men opened their eyes, and with gazes shining as brilliantly as lightning, they stared at the spot where Su Ming was. What a berserker mark! Who is that child? Xianxia's disciple. It's just a normal mountain mark, and he can already cause the weather to change. By the looks of it, that berserker mark is definitely not as simple as it looks. There must be something else. Dozens of divine wills reverberated in each of the dozen swordship hybrids. Su Ming's actions had caught the attention of the powerful berserkers who came to the land of freezing sky from Western Sea Clan. Silence! As these people communicated with each other using their divine wills, one chilling divine will that only they could sense and no one else would be able to hear swept through their minds like a typhoon. It's just the berserker mark of a small fry in the transcendence realm, and you lot are already acting this way. Clan Elder High, you are wrong. You must have seen that this child is a divine general, and his berserker mark is definitely of the complex sort. He has just shown the mountain mark, and the effects of that mark are already shocking. Is a prodigy of this caliber not worthy of our attention? Once that chilling divine will swept through the area, another divine will that was clearly of the same level as the one previously shot out from another one of those sword ships and reverberated through the air. That chilling divine will let out a cold snort. Even if it's complicated. Yet before this divine will could finish speaking, his words faltered, and the sound he made after that one little pause was filled with surprise. The source of his surprise was the word that came out of Su Ming's mouth, who had his arms outstretched as he sat right in the middle of the whirlwind that lifted the snow and swept it all around him on the snow plain. Tribe. The moment the word tribe fell out of his mouth, like a scroll painting that was being opened under the gigantic dark mountain in the sky, a dark mountain tribe filled with its trees and houses appeared in the sky with an astonishingly imposing manner, and in a way that would make all those who understood berserker marks feel shocked to the core. Right then, if anyone lifted their heads up to look, they would not be able to tell where was the sky and where the earth. They would feel as if they were looking at a mirage. Yet those plants, those houses, and all the other things looked so real that they could not be described with words. In a corner of the tribe in the distance where the Western Sea Clan auction would be held, Chen Lanmeng walked out from her tent with a fur robe she had just put on. She stood outside her tent and her beautiful eyes shone with a curious glint. As she looked at the dark mountain in the sky and the vivid dark mountain tribe, she became stupefied. This is his berserker mark. More people walked out of the tents set up around Chen Lanmeng's and looked at the sky. The sorrow in the air was felt clearly by all the berserkers in the area. More importantly, that sorrow did not disappear as soon as it came. Instead, as time passed by, it grew stronger. In the temporary tribe, all the people who came to attend the auction walked out of their tents and looked at the sky. Most of these people came from freezing sky, and some among these people had witnessed the battle between Su Ming and Sima Xin, and had also seen Su Ming revealing his berserker mark during that time. The moment they saw the strange sight in the sky, they immediately let out cries of surprise. This is Su Ming's berserker mark. There's no mistaking this. I remember that mountain and that tribe under the mountain. Only Su Ming has that berserker mark in the entire freezing sky clan. This is Su Ming's berserker mark. Uproars broke out within the tribe and grew increasingly louder. As the people passed the information they knew to the others while keeping their gazes fixed on the sky, a person in black clothes stood outside an ordinary-looking tent inside the tribe. His face was calm and he did not even lift his head. It was as if no matter what happened around him, nothing could catch his interest. He only stood there in silence and waited for the order that would come from the tent behind him. If Su Ming was there, he would be able to tell with just one glance that there were some similarities between this man and Zi Che in some of their actions, because they were the same sort of people. Interesting. Uncle Chen, I didn't expect that there would be someone like this in Freezing Sky Clan. A voice with a hint of laughter traveled out from the tent. The moment that voice spoke, a gust of wind blew past and lifted the snow on the ground along with a corner of the tent. That gust of wind saw everything that was inside the tent before it disappeared within, never coming out again. That tent did not seem big on the outside, but it was enormous inside, as big as a palace. There were a dozen-something men dressed in black clothes, just like the person outside the tent, standing around quietly. These people had their heads lowered and stood like statues, but within each of them, a presence that had surpassed that of transcendence and belonged to those within the bone sacrifice realm could be felt. There were even some whose aura was so strong that even a normal berserker in the bone sacrifice realm would find it hard to compare. At the center of the tent that contained another dimension in itself was a table and a young man wearing a green long robe with a black dragon stitched on it taking a sip from the wine cup in his hands. That young man did not seem old, but in his eyes, even as he blinked, was an intimidating pressure, and he had a unique temperament. That temperament was one that only belonged to those who stood above everyone else. With just one word, he could cause disaster to fall on the entire land. With just one word, he could make a countless number of tribes turn to ashes. With just one word, half of South Morning would go to battle for him. That was the bearing of those who held supremacy over all people. Even if that temperament was not too strong and seemed as if it was just starting to form, it was already slowly building up. Perhaps one day, he would be able to announce himself right before the entire land of South Morning with that presence. Second young lord, this person's status is rather unique. He belongs to Freezing Sky Clan, but at the same time not. An old voice spoke from before the young man. On the other side of the table was a white-haired old man who was drinking with the young man. That old man's voice was hoarse, and he wore a long white robe as he sat there. There were 8 white clouds embroidered on his sleeves. If there was anyone from Freezing Sky Clan familiar with Heaven Gate who saw those 8 white clouds, they would definitely feel shocked and immediately kneel down in worship, because those 8 white clouds meant that this person belonged to Heaven Gate's 8th layer. There were 9 continents on Heaven Gate, and the 8th continent had an incredibly high rank among them. Those who could live there were people who could make the entire freezing sky tremble when they walked out and stomped on the ground. Oh! The young man placed the wine cup in his hands down and looked at the old man with a smile. At that moment, besides the crowd in the temporary tribe built by Western Sea Clan keeping a close eye on the strange sight in the sky, there was one more person who stood on the snow plain outside the tribe, Sima Xin, whose expression had drastically changed due to that sorrow from Su Ming enveloping his body. He grabbed onto Bai Su, as if he was hysterical, and roared madly with bloodshot eyes. I already succeeded, so why did this happen? Tell me, why did this happen? Sima Xin could not accept this reality. The thing which he had desired for a long time and even succeeded in obtaining had just taken a turn for the worse. This was something he was absolutely not prepared for. It would have been fine if he had never obtained it in the first place, but he did, just moments ago. This sort of feeling of having something he had just obtained forcefully snatched out of his hands made Sima Xin unable to control his own actions. Bai Su's face was pale. Sharp pain traveled from her arms, which were held in a tight grip by Sima Xin. Yet the physical pain was nothing compared to the pain her heart felt as it was ripped apart. She looked at Sima Xin and gave him a broken smile. All of a sudden, she saw through this man. This handsome and forever gentle big brother Sima of hers was now like a clown. Besides raging in madness, he did not seem to have the courage to do anything else. This is impossible. This is absolutely impossible. Sima Xin sensed the sorrow, saw the dark mountain and the tribe in the sky, and even felt Su Ming's aura growing rapidly stronger. This made him so deeply regretful he almost went mad. Chapter 303, Protector. He was regretful, deeply regretful. He regretted that he did not do everything that he could in the past and kill Su Ming beforehand so that he would not have been able to enter Freezing Sky Clan. He was regretful, but no matter how much he thought about it, the only chance to regret was during the first time he fought against him. Besides that one time, he could not find any other chance where he could have fought back against Su Ming. During the first time they met in Freezing Sky Clan, the two of them had battled to the extreme, but even if Sima Xin wanted to kill Su Ming, he was prevented from doing so. Even if he had forcefully attacked him, not only would he not succeed, he would also have brought a great disaster on his own head. He had not understood this at that time, but right then, with his understanding towards the 9th summit, he knew what would happen to him incredibly clearly from experience. After all, He was one of the few people who knew the entire event of what had happened in Northern Frontier Tribe. Sai Ma Xin, you're hurting me. Just as Sai Ma Xin was trapped in his own madness, an aloof voice traveled into his ears. That voice belonged to Bai Su, and she was looking at Sai Ma Xin coldly. She had seen through this person. In truth, she should have seen through him a long time ago, but she did not want to. She had been blinded by a veil called love. Right until she met Su Ming, and through the bits of contact she had with him that accumulated through time, that veil slowly changed color, gradually allowing her to recover her senses, and slowly letting her wake up from Sai Ma Xin. Yet at that time, she was still caught in a half-asleep state. She was uncertain and did not know what to do, did not know how to make her own decisions. Only when she left Su Ming and stood before Sai Ma Xin did she suddenly wake up fully. As she woke up, a pain as if her heart was torn apart caused her face to turn pale. Hidden underneath that cold gaze, Sai Ma Xin saw deep regret. Su Ming and Sai Ma Xin. Two different people, two different experiences. The fact that Sai Ma Xin could become a prodigy and have the world at his beck and call for so many years meant that he was not some common person. Even if he was caught in this indescribable rage and madness, he could still force all of these emotions down in an instant. However, this rage did not disappear and only became stronger. Because if the berserker child was not planted with the seed, he would be uninjured. But if the seed was planted and something like the situation with Su Ming happened, then to Sai Ma Xin, it was practically a disaster that would completely ruin him. Berserker seeds backlash. There was even a high possibility that he might turn into Su Ming's berserker seed. Even if he did not know the great art of heartless berserker seed, Su Ming could still obtain his one and only berserker seed. To Su Ming, this one and only berserker seed would just be a gust of wind in his life. But to Sai Ma Xin, if this really came to be, then it would mean his entire life. This was just a possibility. Sai Ma Xin had no idea what sort of change would happen, but it was precisely because he did not know that he was afraid. He was so terrified he went mad. Su, I lost control of myself. Sai Ma Xin let go of Bai Su's shoulders with a pale face. When he remembered what he just did, he was assaulted with regret once again. Bai Su might have failed, but this girl was still useful to him. In fact, it could even be said that she was one of the very few methods for him to save himself. Su, let me see your father, ask him to help me. When Sai Ma Xin spoke and saw the chill in Bai Su's eyes, his heart sank. Su, I was in the wrong just now, but you don't understand why I did that. Once Su Ming's power increases this time and he completes the process, I will die. This is the first time I failed using the great art of heartless berserker seed, and the results for it are far too dreadful for me to even think of. Perhaps, from now onwards, I can only become a puppet for Su Ming. Su, it's because of this that I lost control of myself. Bai Su was silent. Her eyelashes fluttered, and she closed her eyes. The moment she closed her eyes, killing intent appeared briefly in Sai Ma Xin's eyes, but he immediately hid it. He turned around and looked in the direction where Su Ming was, at the spot where that sorrow spreading out was the strongest. There's still one more way. I have to use this chance and kill Su Ming. Once I kill him, then all of this will be settled. But Sai Ma Xin hesitated. Before the incident with Northern Frontier, he still had an ounce of confidence in killing Su Ming. But what had happened there made him understand clearly that there was a difference between him and Su Ming. He did not have the confidence that he could win against Su Ming, especially right before both Western Sea Clan and Freezing Sky Clan. If he fought against Su Ming here, then what awaited him would be an incredibly severe punishment. Even if he managed to kill Su Ming, then besides that severe punishment, he would also have to face the 9th Summit's madness. With this punishment and madness on his head, even if Sai Ma Xin betrayed Freezing Sky Clan, he would have no place in the land of South Morning, unless he escaped to the Shaman tribe. What should I do? What should I do? Sai Ma Xin trembled and despair appeared in his eyes. Take this and go back to Freezing Sky Clan, then offer it under Heaven Gate. My father's disciples will receive you. Sai Ma Xin, this will be the last time I help you. From now onwards, don't bother me anymore. Bai Su opened her eyes and brought out a wooden slip which she threw on the ground, then she turned around and walked into the distance. Her back showed desolation, loneliness, a deeply rooted regret, and at the same time, freedom. She wanted to go and see Su Ming, but she bit her bottom lip. Even if she broke through the skin and blood started flowing down, she would still not have the courage to face him. She could only choose to leave dispirited. When she came, she had been laughing and talking to Su Ming happily, occasionally looking at him with mischief on her face, and when she left, she did so dejected and miserable, as if she had lost her heart, her soul. Like an injured little beast, she wanted to be alone and lick her wounds quietly. She knew that she made a mistake that would not be forgiven. Thank goodness that mistake did not leave behind an irreparable damage to that person who appeared in her heart right now. In the wind and snow, she left with her head bent down. Behind her, the tribe and dark mountain in the sky had become a shocking sight to behold. Su Ming's voice echoed within the windstorm caused by the whirlwind on the snow plain. Blood moon. It was almost day. The sky should have been dark, but due to the light shining on the snow, the world only seemed blurry, not dark. As Su Ming's words rang, in the sky above Dark Mountain, a blood moon manifested seemingly at the highest point of the sky. As the blood moon appeared, the sorrowful feeling became much stronger, and as it spread out, it turned into a windstorm that shook the skies and moved the earth. An aura that became increasingly stronger gathered around Su Ming, and it only continued to grow, continued to become stronger. Xianxia stood several thousands of feet away from Su Ming and endured that mighty pressure, but he was still continuously pushed backwards. He forced himself to back down slower. He wanted to stay in the place and protect the Su Ming right now. He might not have seen by Su and did not know what had happened that caused such a change in Su Ming, but he knew that he himself was a part of the Ninth Summit, and Su Ming was a disciple of the Ninth Summit. That was enough. As Su Ming's presence grew increasingly stronger, the divine wills inside the dozen-something swordship hybrids within the temporary tribe built for Western Sea Clan's auction once again spoke to each other. What a berserker mark! He can at least be considered a prodigy, but how could he choose to break through right outside Western Sea Clan? Does he really think that we won't dare to attack him? Clan Elder High, don't be reckless. That child is Xianxia's disciple. Xianxia? That crazy lunatic? I've never met him before. I would have let this slide if you didn't mention it, but now that you have, I'd like to see just how powerful this Xianxia is. That sullen divine will turned into a sharp whistle that very few people could hear and charged out of the tribe. Like a bolt of lightning, it flew towards the windstorm caused by Su Ming with a rumble. His divine will was like a sharp sword that wanted to split the windstorm in two, then kill Su Ming who was within it with one strike. Almost the moment this person's divine will charged out, noticed by very few people in the tribe, the white-haired old man sitting by the table in the ordinary-looking tent with the black-robed people standing quietly inside spoke languidly to the young man before him. Because he is part of the Ninth Summit. The moment he said the final word, his expression suddenly changed and he lifted his head swiftly. Right then, the young man also frowned, and that action caused his domineering might to be revealed. When these two people noticed it, that sharp sword that was formed from the divine will had already cut through the snow plain and appeared outside the windstorm caused by Su Ming. It was about to cut down that windstorm. Yet right then, a wild voice from a divine will that sounded as if it had appeared seemingly out of thin air and seemingly from the world located far in the distance, though it actually came from within the Ninth Summit on freezing Sky Clan's great frozen plains, came rushing forth with a thunderous roar like a tidal wave. Bloody hell, which of you brats had the guts to attack my disciple? I'll kill your tribe. I'll kill your entire clan. I'll kill all of your reincarnations. That voice was filled with an indescribable imperiousness. The moment it spoke, it caused that divine will sword that was about to cut to tremble viciously and shatter with a bang as if it was attacked by the voice. Right as it shattered, the scattered divine will instantly fell backwards with an absolutely terrified air. The murderous aura within the voice shook the sky and earth. As it reverberated in the air, the murderous aura enveloped that retreating and scattered divine will once again, and absolutely crushed it. A faint, shrill cry rang out. At the same time, a red-haired old man trembled within one of the swordships in the tribe. He opened his eyes swiftly and coughed out a mouthful of blood. His face instantly turned pale, and even his hair started withering away rapidly. In the blink of an eye, he became bald. More alarming was the fact that once his hair fell off, his flesh also started withering away rapidly. In the span of a breath, he turned into a person of only skin and bones. If it was not for a piercing bright light shining from the jade on his chest that had the sun rising from the sea horizon carved on it, he would have certainly died. Cracking sounds echoed in the air, and the jade shattered once it neutralized the power brought by that attack. Once it shattered, the old man coughed out blood once more. A look as if he had just narrowly escaped death appeared in his eyes, and his face was filled with fear and shock. Just a moment ago, there was no doubt that he was already halfway through death's door. Xianxia. The old man shuddered. Chapter 304, Auction. Xianxia's voice could not be heard by everyone. It made of the divine will. Only those who had reached a certain level of power could sense it, so only limited few people in this tribe could hear it. Once that old man who wanted to hurt Su Ming was punished for his actions by nearly dying, no other divine will appeared within those dozen-something swordships. They were all deathly silent. Within the tribe, in the ordinary-looking tent protected by the men in black robes, a surprised glint appeared in the eyes of the young man with a black dragon embroidered on his robe, and his breathing quickened. Xianxia. It's him. The old man sitting right in front of the young man smiled wryly and nodded his head. If I can have such a powerful person serving me. When the young man uttered the final word in his sentence, he shook his head and took a big swig from his wine cup. Second young master, don't think about this anymore. That's impossible. As one of the three most powerful berserkers in the land of South Morning, he will definitely not join in the battle between the big tribes. Of the three great berserkers, besides Guru Long Li, who is known to the world and currently staying in Western Sea Clan, very few people know about the other two. And even if they know them, they would definitely not spread the news. Because powerful berserkers like these have the right to choose the way they want to live, such as Senior Xianxia. His personality is weird and he's occasionally crazy. There are less than 10 people who know about his true identity in Freezing Sky Clan, and even within the great tribe of Freezing Sky, only those who have the blood of the elder like you are allowed to know this secret after becoming adults. That is why many of the disciples and outsiders have their own assumptions regarding his identity, but most of them are negative. We wouldn't dare reveal his identity either, or else once he leaves Freezing Sky Clan, it'll be difficult for us to get him back, the old man said with a wry smile. His disciples don't know about it as well. The young man was surprised. The old man hesitated for a moment before he said softly, besides, that person from the 9 Li tribe, the other disciples shouldn't know about this. A glint appeared in the young man's eyes. He immersed himself in his thoughts for a moment before he looked at the old man. Invite that person called Su Ming to join Western Sea Clan's secret auction after the official auction. I will pay for whatever he wants to buy. But, if your older brother learns of this, I'm just making a friend. I sincerely want to befriend Su Ming and I'm not asking for his help. Are people actually going to stop me from making friends now? The young man smiled, but there was a chilling glare in his eyes when he looked at the old man. The old man was silent for a moment before he nodded his head. When I was still a child, I heard of the battle thousands of years ago between the 3 great berserkers and the shaman's great patriarch. The young man mumbled, and fascination appeared in his eyes. Outside, the windstorm continued howling on the snow plain, only growing stronger. At its center, Su Ming could also feel his own aura increasing. Snowstorm. He mumbled. The instant he uttered that one word, an endless amount of snow appeared around in the sky around Dark Mountain, the tribe, and the blood moon. That snow seemed to have fused together with the snow that had originally been in the area until they could not be told apart from each other. Once they fit together perfectly, the scene that appeared in the sky was the picture of the snow-covered blood moon and Dark Mountain. The moment the picture was revealed, Su Ming lifted his head and let out a long howl towards the sky. The aura within him increased exponentially, and his blood started circulating rapidly within him. The power of awakening started rising in an astonishing manner. As it rose, cracking sounds came from within Su Ming's body as if his flesh and blood were being pressed down and his bones were rubbing against each other. That power increased until eventually, a loud bang sounded in Su Ming's head. The moment it did so, Su Ming broke through the middle stage of the awakening realm and went into the later stage. Almost the second he arrived at the later stage of the awakening realm, the picture of the snow-covered blood moon and dark mountain in the sky charged towards him like a scroll painting that was dragged into the windstorm. Then as it twisted in the air, it flew towards Su Ming along with the windstorm. The mountain mark was on his face, the red moon in his eye, the tribe on his chest, and the snow flew around his entire body. At that moment, Su Ming's power increased once again. The piece of berserker bone he had obtained from Han Mountain's ancestor in the past started melting rapidly within his body. A power that belonged to those in the berserker tribe spread out and turned into the power of awakening realm belonging to Su Ming. It fused with his qi, and as his heart pounded strongly against his chest, it spread into every part of his body. Along with the completion of his berserker mark, Su Ming's body experienced an earth-shaking change. He became stronger while still retaining his original physical form. His power continued rising, and just when he arrived at the later stage of the awakening realm, he shot straight into the peak of the later stage. There was only a little more before he could attain great completion in the awakening realm. Su Ming had a strong feeling that if he closed that small distance and attained completion in the awakening realm, then he could try and conquer that realm that belonged only to those who were powerful, bone sacrifice. He would need to refine a piece of his spine into the true berserker bone. The berserker bone that only belonged to the ancients and would only appear through atavism. Only when he managed to refine such a bone could he be seen as to have reached the bone sacrifice realm. If the day came when he could turn all his bones into the ancients' bones, then even if he could not split apart heaven and earth and pluck the stars, moon, and sun from the sky, his physical abilities would still be enough for him to have the wind and clouds at his beck and call. If he could take one more step and become one of the few who, through great difficulty, reached the berserker soul realm after attaining great completion in the bone sacrifice realm, then he could call himself as one of the truly powerful berserkers in the berserker tribe. It was a long road, but Su Ming longed for it. Su Ming swiftly opened his eyes and the berserker mark covering his entire body glowed, but as calmness filled his eyes, there was also a hint of pity hidden underneath. He had tried, but he fell slightly short of that step that would take him to reach great completion in the awakening realm. He could not cross over and could only stay in the later stage of the awakening realm while endlessly accumulating his power. I know what's missing. Su Ming stood up silently. The instant he stood up, the windstorm around him disappeared and the world returned to its original state. Snow continued falling from the sky. This time, when Su Ming stood up, he did not rely on the puppet beast but his own legs. As his power increased, his physical body strength also increased exponentially. The 16 ice hoops could no longer limit his movements. Life is missing from my berserker mark. The tribe is empty, but I don't have the ability to draw the people who belong there. I need the song played by the Zun in my memories to envelop my berserker mark and bring me, to find the path back to my home. Su Ming closed his eyes. The memory of Xianxia bringing him to that peaceful tribe surfaced in his mind. He also remembered the blind, old Zun maker in the tribe who could no longer see light. I should find time and retrieve my Zun, Su Ming mumbled and swatted away the snow on his body before walking back towards Western Sea Clan's tribe in the distance. Xianxia ran forth from thousands of feet away. When he saw Su Ming, the worry on his face faded away. When Su Ming nodded at him with a smile, he followed behind and walked slowly back to the tribe with him. When the two of them reached the tribe and walked in, almost all the people stood outside their tribes and looked towards Su Ming at the same time. There were no words, neither were there a lot of actions taken, but when those gazes fell on Su Ming, all of the people lowered their heads. Su Ming walked past them calmly and did not stop. He went to his tent, bent his back, and walked in. The night went by. Perhaps it was a coincidence, but the moment Su Ming entered the tent, the sun started rising in the distance. A new day had arrived. Wind blew past the land and lifted the snow, sweeping it through the tribe. This day would be the first day of the auction held by Western Sea Clan. After resting for 2 hours in his tent, Xianxia came to Su Ming's tent with a rather courteous bearing, along with well-hidden complicated feelings, and personally escorted Su Ming to the auction hall. Congratulations, Brother Su. Your power has improved. Even with my power in the initial stage of the bone sacrifice realm, I still feel somewhat pressured when I stand before you. Xianxia walked beside Su Ming and spoke as he wrapped his fist in his palm to Su Ming. Su Ming smiled faintly and wrapped his fist to return the salute, but he did not choose to provide too many explanations. Xianxia followed behind silently. However, his eyes would occasionally scan through the surroundings with caution hidden within his gaze. The three of them soon reached the easternmost part of the tribe. There was a large building there. It was built in the form of a ring and looked incredibly majestic. It should be able to accommodate several thousands of people within. Right in the center was a circular-shaped platform. That spot should be the place where the items would be brought out to be auctioned. There were ring-shaped stages around that platform. Except for the top layer, which was divided into several individual rooms, the other layers underneath were decorated with several tables and chairs that surrounded the platform. There were already quite some people who were sitting there and waiting for the auction to begin. The place bubbled with noise. Occasionally, someone would enter, and sometimes, someone would move from their seats to search for their friends to talk. There were also quite a number of Western Sea clan disciples patrolling around the place and looking at all the people who came forth with aloof gazes. The auction is about to start. Brother Su, this way please. Clan Elder Bai Zonghai reserved the 9th room at the top layer specifically for you, Xianxia said respectfully. His respect was born not just because of the pressure brought by Su Ming after his power increased, but also because of the piece of news he received just this morning. Clan Elder Hai sent word to leave a room at the top layer empty for Su Ming. It had to be stated that there were not many rooms in the top layer to begin with, and they were reserved for the powerful berserkers in the Berserker Soul realm. Normal people would not be able to step inside. Besides, the rooms in the top layer were originally filled. That 9th room was only built just this morning. For one person, they built an additional room. This thing was something that was difficult to imagine for Xianxia. Su Ming might not be from the same clan as he, but he still needed to be more courteous and respectful towards him. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes, but he did not decline having the room. He nodded his head, and under Xianxia's lead, he went to the top layer and entered the 9th room. Once he entered the room, Su Ming saw an incredibly beautiful woman with an alluring body and shapely curves standing up from a chair in the room. She smiled at him, and that one smile was flirtatious and filled with a unique charm. I am Zishan, and my master is Hai Yun Lai. By the orders of my master, I have come to provide you with the explanations towards the items that will be auctioned. A barely noticeable crease appeared between Su Ming's brows. He did not know what happened yesterday night, but he could tell that the man named Hai was slightly odd. He left Su Ming a room for his own and also arranged his own disciple to come forth to provide explanations and serve him. It was pretty puzzling for someone of Clan Elder Hai Dongzong's status to do such a thing. It was either that he had other plans, or he had a request to make of Su Ming. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes and he asked unhurriedly, "Is this all?" Chapter 305, Western Seas Prelude. Su Ming had already become more mature and was no longer the boy from Dark Mountain who had been ignorant of everything around him. The change in his tribe, waking up in the land of South Morning, rising in status in Han Mountain City, the trip to the land of the shamans, and everything he went through in Freezing Sky had led to Su Ming's intelligence continuously becoming more well-rounded at a speed as if he was going through one transformation after another. Even if he was still not as cunning as monsters, he was no longer a greenhorn. Take this situation for an example. If it was his past self when he was still in Dark Mountain, he would definitely have chosen to ask what these people wanted right in their faces. If it was his past self when he had just arrived in Han Mountain City after the change in his tribe, he would have made a different choice. There was a high possibility that he would have gone for a second, less preferable choice, and backed out of the room once he saw it and the woman before him. He would then have searched for a corner and joined the auction from there, crushing all their plans by remaining in solitude. Yet now, as Su Ming gained more experience, his choice changed once again. He did not choose to ask for the answer, neither did he choose to leave alone and remain in solitude. Instead, he chose to use another method. By acting as if he was extorting something from them, he could discover what the problem was by their expressions, their eyes, and other minor details, and from there, he could make his decision. "Brother Su, what do you mean?" The woman with the alluring body, whose voice sounded like orchids, Zishan, smiled beautifully with a calm expression even after she heard Su Ming's words. Su Ming did not answer her. He simply cast a calm glance at the woman before he turned around and walked past the stunned Xianxia, who was standing behind him after he led Su Ming into the room. Judging by his actions, Su Ming wanted to leave the 9th room. Xianxia followed silently by his side. At that moment, a glint appeared in Zishan's eyes. She did not immediately speak, but when Su Ming was halfway out of the room and looked as if he really intended to leave, her voice traveled faintly into his ears. "Am I like a ferocious beast that you chose to leave right after you saw me?" Her voice was very pleasant to the ears and made her sound pitiful. There was also a certain melodic quality to her voice, making others want to continue listening to it, but Su Ming was not one of them. With one step, he moved out of the room completely and walked forward without even turning back. When he was 3 to 5 steps away from the room, Zishan's voice came once again from within. "Brother Su, please wait. Of course, this isn't everything. As an apology, my master said you may choose one of the items that will be auctioned off this time and my master will buy it for you." As Zishan spoke, she walked out of the room and smiled at Su Ming. That smile on her face was so beautiful that it could make hearts race against chests. At the very least, it made Chang Yi look rather uncomfortable. Su Ming stopped. With a smile on his face, he turned around and met Zishan's gaze. Then he walked towards the room. Zishan intentionally moved half a step back, and once Su Ming entered the room, he sat down on the chair by the side. Xianxia stood behind him silently, like a block of wood. Even if he had his eyes closed, his awareness of his surroundings did not go down. Almost all his attention was poured into every single minute sign of movement around them. Zishan closed the door to the room and strutted inside. She sat down across from Su Ming, and once her beautiful eyes sized up Xianxia, who was standing behind him, she looked at Su Ming and smiled before she even said anything. "Brother Su, you live up to your name as a disciple of the 9th Summit. You even brought a follower while traveling around. I cannot hope to compare to you in this matter." From Su Ming's position, he could clearly see the center of the auction hall underneath through the window nearby. At that moment, the area underneath was bustling with excitement, and streams of people continuously entered the hall. "He's not my follower but my disciple nephew," Su Ming retorted gently. "I see, and here I was wondering why this brother looked familiar. Now that you mentioned it, I remembered. Isn't this the famous Xianxia, who is ranked in the top 10 in Freezing Sky Clan's ranking board of the Great Frozen Plains?" Zishan covered her petite mouth and put on a stupefied look as if she had just recognized him. Xianxia remained silent and did not bother giving her a reaction. He was already used to this type of ridicule. From his initial bouts of embarrassment, he had grown to not be too bothered by all these, because he knew that the people of the 9th Summit had touched his heart in a manner that other places would never be able to do so. When Zishan said those words, her eyes fell on Su Ming as if she was doing so unwittingly, and she started searching for cracks in Su Ming's behavior, but alas, she found nothing. Su Ming still remained calm and composed, and there was not a hint of change on him. After all, he practiced the clearing mind art, and his actions were all executed once his mind was cleared. Perhaps his actions would seem slightly green to some old folks, but this woman before him would not be able to find any cracks in his behavior so easily, even if there was displeasure boiling in his heart right then. Su Ming closed his eyes, ignored the woman's words, breathed calmly, and waited for the auction to start. Bai Su was the one girl who saw this attitude of his the most and had been angered many times in the past due to him ignoring her. She had thought of everything she could possibly do to get him to react to her, but none of them bore great results. From this alone, it could be seen that this particular attitude of Su Ming's dealt quite a huge blow to women. Zishan stared at Su Ming for a long period of time. This was the first time she had ever seen him with this attitude of his. He was blatantly treating her like an ornament, or perhaps pretending that she did not even exist. It made Zishan, whose words were already at the tip of her tongue, bite her tongue and swallow her words. "Brother Su, you have great bearing." After a long while, Zishan commented once again in a rather disgruntled fashion. Yet her reply was merely Su Ming closing his eyes as if he did not hear her. Zishan stared at him for a while before she also closed her eyes and no longer paid any heed to him. By doing so, a veil of silence instantly fell over the room, and compared to the noise outside, the room and what went on beyond were like two different worlds. However, compared to Su Ming, Zishan was still somewhat lacking. She could not truly clear her mind and would occasionally open her eyes and look at him. A frown gradually appeared between her brows. "I refuse to believe that this person can truly remain so calm." He's definitely pretending. I've seen way too many people who like pretending that they're sophisticated characters. Xianxia let out a cold harumph in her heart. In the midst of the silence in the room, time passed by slowly. Approximately the burning of an incense stick later, muffled drum beats came from the platform at the center of the auction hall. The drum beats were like rumbling thunder that seemed to be able to shake the sky and earth. The sound spread in all directions, and each drum beat felt as if it landed on people's bodies, causing most of those who heard it to feel their hearts shaking. As the drum beats reverberated through the air, whining sounds spread out swiftly and blended into the drum beats. However, they were much sharper and seemed to have snatched away all the audience's breaths before they rose into the sky. The drum beats and whining sounds made the auction hall that could accommodate thousands of people to instantly fall silent. All their gazes gathered on the platform at the center. At that moment, Su Ming opened his eyes. He saw 9 burly men standing on the platform at the center of the auction hall beyond the balcony. They were striking the beast skin drums placed before each of them with both hands. The drum beats rumbled in the air and fused together. There were also 9 beautiful women wearing white long robes that were somewhat revealing standing beside those 9 burly men. Each of the 9 women held gigantic conches in their hands. Naturally, those sharp whining sounds came from the conches. The moment the drum beats and the whining sounds from the conches reached their climax, the earth trembled. An even crack appeared on the platform at the center. As the crack spread into its surroundings, the men and women went to stand at the edge of the platform. The instant they did so, a gigantic stone pillar rose up from the crack. Once the stone pillar rose to about 100 feet, it gradually came to a stop. A mumbling sound that no one could hear clearly spread through the area, and it was followed right after by uproars breaking out everywhere. As that voice spread out, an astonishing change happened to the sky above the gigantic open-air auction hall. Ripples appeared in the bright sky, and they spread out to cover a distance of several tens of thousands of lees. Western Sea Clan. An aged voice spoke from the sky. The moment it did so, as the ripples grew in number, the ripples that covered those tens of thousands of lees turned into a magnificent sea. It was as if those tens of thousands of lees in the world no longer belonged to freezing sky at that instant but had turned into Western Sea Clan's sea. The seawater was as tall as the sky, and the ripples that could be seen were all caused by the seawater's movement. The ground where the auction hall was located was then turned into the seabed for this sea. A brilliant light shone in Su Ming's eyes. He stood up and took a few steps forward to stand at the edge of the balcony before he looked outwards. He was not the only one who did so. At that moment, many people in the auction hall had also stood up to look at this scene, where the world was transformed, and all their expressions changed. This was not a change brought by a simple illusion but was an astonishing transformation that looked incredibly real. In the space around Su Ming, which had now turned into a sea, he saw countless colorful branches appearing. He also saw all sorts of fishes swimming in the water. Some swam in groups, while others swam alone. When Su Ming opened his mouth, he could even see a large amount of air bubbles floating out of his mouth. This is a rune Western Sea Clan invented many years ago. Brother Su, what do you think of it? Xianxia smiled and went up to stand beside him. As she spoke, air bubbles floated out of her mouth as well, and it made it seem as if they were really in the sea. Xianxia noticed what Su Ming was looking at and explained with a light chuckle, "That colorful thing is called a coral." As Xianxia spoke, each of the 9 beautiful ladies who wore rather revealing white dresses standing at the edge of the platform at the center of the auction hall brought out a white scale. They stuck it to their foreheads and their bodies immediately floated up. Their naked feet instantly turned into fish tails, and they turned into 9 mermaids who swam around the auction hall. Their beautiful singing voices still managed to transmit in the seawater, and those who heard them were enchanted. Almost the instant the mermaids started swimming in the water, the 9 burly men brought out blue beast skins and stuck them on their bodies. Once they did so, their bodies started twisting, and after a moment, muffled roars rang, and the 9 men turned into 9 ferocious sea dragons. Their roars spread through the entire area and fused with the mermaid song, creating a sight that shook the people's hearts. At that moment, the aged voice spoke abruptly from the stone pillar. After the long 100 years, Western Sea Clan's auction will once again be held in the land of freezing sky.